our population was 400, but now we are at 739 people here. So we are happy.
I like my school because the teacher in this school teach very well and the qualified teachers.
I like my school because it's big.
This is the new Imo State, where education is free. The Imo Rescue Mission. Imo must be better.
So what's up, sweetheart? You really look like you're up to something.
I have a secret.
Okay.
I'll be going to Europe next week.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Like you have your visa, your passport, your plane ticket?
No, not that way. Some men are helping us. We pay them, they take us through the desert, and then we cross the sea into Europe.
The desert, the sea. Isn't that the route where many have died?
Yes, it is indeed a very dangerous journey. In 2016 alone, 4,900 people died while crossing the Mediterranean Sea to enter Europe. Many were Nigerians. For the very few who survived the journey, they are forced into prostitution or other crimes just to survive. Eventually, they will be arrested and deported to Nigeria. Don't be a victim. Don't go this way.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, let's talk business as Naira to strengthen further against the dollar. Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, set to commence twice a week forex sales to market participants. Details of this and more with Kolo Mohammed on our business news segment.
Innovation has been identified as key in the administration of small, micro and medium enterprises in Nigeria. Smallholder business persons were put through the efficiency of innovation in doing business. This was in a one-day interactive session.
I am elated because MSMEs can now have a platform for assessing local, regional and global markets for the development of the sector in Nigeria. I therefore wish to express my profound gratitude to those organizers of this event.
It is expected that going forward, new innovative ways will be employed for true financial freedom. The Central Bank of Nigeria approved a wholesale development finance institution license with national authorization for the Development Bank of Nigeria, DBN PLC. The Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, has confirmed. This was conveyed in a letter to the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of DBN by Governor of Central Bank, Godwin Emefiele, and Minister of Finance, Mrs. Kemi Adeosun, signed by the Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria in charge of financial system stability. The approval was, however, made subject to meeting the minimum capital requirement of 100 billion naira, reconstitution of the board of the bank, and reviewing its organizational structure. And in continuation of its determination to sustain the foreign exchange market, the Central Bank of Nigeria wishes to inform market participants and the general public that it will commence twice weekly forex sales to bureau de change operators from Monday, April the 3rd, 2017. Licensed bureau de change operators are therefore required to fund their accounts with the Central Bank of Nigeria on Mondays and Wednesdays, while they receive their purchases on Tuesdays and Thursdays, respectively. The sale amount to bureau de change is hereby increased to $10,000 weekly, that is, 5,000 per bid, and a new rate will be announced on Monday, April the 3rd. The equities market closed on a positive note, gaining 1.05%, leaving all-share index at 25,533.82 points. Up ahead is a graphic summary of the latest closing figures on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With Business News, I am Kolo Muhammad.
Kolo Muhammad, thank you very much there for the newspaper, for the business segment. And next for us, of course, is to take a look at the front pages of some of today's newspapers. That's Bayo's business, not yours.
And the man whose business it is to review the papers with us this morning is already in the studio, and that's Bayo Toby. Bayo, good morning. It's good to see you.
Good morning, Rhoda. Thank you very much. Good morning, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Right, Bayo, I'd delight to have you with us today. Let's begin by taking a look at the front page of the New Telegraph newspaper, busy with a number of stories. The lead story is, of course, on the outbreak of meningitis. It says meningitis outbreak kills 282 in 5 states. And it has 2 riders. Teacher, my daughter died due to lack of vaccine. And disease spreads to FCT, Zamfara, Sokoto, Kebbi, Katsina, Niger, and Yobe. Meningitis outbreak kills 282 in 5 states. Now, above that headline, but below the nameplate, you have a window of other headlines. Buhari will return to London doctors. That's according to the presidency. Details on page 7. Hong Kong, Nigerian consulate in 11.76 million naira rent scandal. Cleric impregnates daughter, jailed 9 years. That's on page 9. Amputee and others impersonate Saraki, Tinubu, Kyari, and raking 20 million naira. That's on page 8. Now, also below the latest headline, you have 3 other headlines that we should take right away. Rep, that's House of Rep member, remanded in prison over certificate forgery. And INEC officials risk 5-year jail term for belonging to parties, and Senate approves electronic voting. That's on page 6. Depression, world's most widespread illness. That's according to WHO, and details can be found inside. Now, above the nameplate, there's another headline there. IMF to Nigeria. That's the kicker. IMF to Nigeria. Scrap multiple exchange rates and sees hope in nation's economic recovery plan.
All right, so now we'll move over to the Daily Trust, and the Daily Trust is also leading with the meningitis issue, and it captions it this way: vaccine shortage as meningitis spread. Vaccine shortage as meningitis spread. And of course you can see a graph there of states where the cases are quite high. And just above that lead story, there are other headlines there. It says Senate approves electronic voting in election, starts on page 3. And just beside that, IMF wants Nigeria to raise VAT excise rates. IMF wants Nigeria to raise VAT excise rates. Now let's go to the foot of the paper, just below the map there. It reads, "We have no rift with presidencies," says Reps, and that's the House of Reps. That story is on page 8. That's the foot of Daily Trust. Dogara not in touch with his states, as a statement there credited to Abubakar. That's on page 34 of the Daily Trust. And finally, transmission distribution obstacles deny Nigerians power. That's on page 13 of the Daily Trust. All right, Bayo, let's get your views on this one.
Yes, it's the concern about the meningitis. Or immediately now, there is a Nigeria Center for Disease Control is leading a multi-agency team to tackle the spread of meningitis. It has now covered 15 states. So far, there have been 745 cases, and we have recorded about 314 deaths. Dr. Lawal Bakare of the NCDC says the outbreak is caused by a new strain of cerebrospinal meningitis. Now, vaccination had been given before, but it was for a strain that is tagged NMA. But this strain now is an NMC, and therefore is not responding to the usual vaccination. The states that have been determined to have epidemic dimensions of the affection include Niger State with 49 cases, Zamfara 44, Sokoto has 19, Kebbi has 10, and Katsina has recorded 32. 5 persons were recorded in Abuja also. Meanwhile, patients are advised to avoid sleeping in crowded rooms. The symptoms that have been identified with cerebrospinal meningitis include headache, high fever, vomiting, sensitivity to light, and sometimes confusion. The ultimate is stiff neck. So you are advised to be on the watch out. Talking about the IMF has advised Nigeria by virtue of Article 4 consultation to remove restrictions on multiple currency practices. However, they praised the recent easing of exchange restrictions, which they surmise would lead to a unifying foreign exchange market. You recall that on Monday, the central bank issued a statement in which it brought down the foreign exchange rate for Bureau de Change from 381 to 360. This meant a convergence between what was operating at the interbank rate, which was also 360. This has sent the currency speculators into serious retreat. The IMF advice is being taken with a pinch of salt. Experts in the field, including the president of the Bureau de Change, Aminu Gwadabe, says that restrictions which the IMF is advising that should be removed from import duties is a positive move to grow Nigeria's local production. He said, we can't enrich foreign countries at the expense of Nigerian economy. There is also the story that Kingsley read, that President will return to UK for a checkup. This was a refutation from the special advisor, a special assistant to the president of media, Garbashi, who says he's described as utterly false report in some media that President has decided to bring his doctors to Nigeria from London. He says that it is also not true that the President has sent an advance team to London for this purpose. He clarified that the last time the President spoke about this, he said he will return to his position after some time. In fact, if you recall, when the President returned after 50-day vacation, which was extended, he said, I'm feeling much better now. All I will need is to do further follow-up within some weeks. There is a line here that we need to be concerned about the media. False information is getting prominent into the news. Already, the acting chairman of the EFCC is threatening a newspaper to pay $5 billion for publishing last Sunday that he owns 2 properties in Maitama. Also, you recall the story we had to review? Custom Kanu Zone had impounded 223 cars, including 13 in the home of the senator. The senator denied on the floor of the House, and the custom has issued a statement denying that statement is not true. So our gatekeepers need to be very vigilant.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Fake news. That's and then the disturbing trend, of course, that
yes,
you find
undermining the credibility,
not just in Nigeria, worldwide. Abaya, just before I would take the stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper, the IMF, suggesting that Nigeria should raise VAT and excise rates. We hope that the Nigerian government, of course, has effective control of the policy space, because part of the reason for the spike in inflationary pressure in the country was on account, of the various price hikes we saw, either in tariff, or that's the tariff for electricity, or the partial or substantial withdrawal of subsidy on petroleum products. So you increase VAT now that the now that the inflation rate has climbed down, from whatever it was, almost 19% to about 17.78%. You want to increase VAT. Of course, the effect is going to be dramatic in terms of, again, raising the price levels in the country.
Well, it's simple. Like one former president said, you are free to advise. It is left to me to take the advice.
Absolutely, Bayo. So let's look at the front page of the Punch newspaper right away. Punch newspaper, of course, is leading with a story on the EFCC and central bank officials. Let's have that on the screen. EFCC, that's on forex manipulation, that's the kicker. EFCC invites more senior CBN officials and commission to send report to presidency. Details of the story can be found on page 7. And then you also have an earpiece, dump multiple exchange rates, and then forex corps. Again, that's the IMF telling the federal government. We just discussed that a moment ago. DSS gears Ifeanyi Ubah on NNPC's 11 billion naira claim. For that story, is refuted on the front page of the authority, indicating that Ifeanyi Ubah debunks rumor of DSS arrest. That's on page 4 of the authority. But other headlines above the nameplate of the Punch newspaper, we already have that. Bayo has discussed it on the president returning someday, to the UK to see his doctors. And El-Rufai meets clerics over southern Kaduna killings. And Saraki and Dogara meet, and National Assembly targets April to pass budget. Of course, that's the 2017 budget. Let's go to the bottom of the front page of the Punch newspaper now to take the other headlines from the Punch. The bottom of the front page of the Punch newspaper. That's meningitis. Punch is reporting 109, but of course what we read earlier was 282. And the impersonation is also there. Ex-Super Eagles coach Hamilton, that's Paul Hamilton, dies. And coaches and others slam NFF.
And now let's move to the leadership. Leadership, just below the nameplate, you'd see there, Nigerian pilot sets record, becomes first African to fly solo around the world. That's on page 12 of the Leadership Friday. And beside that, Senate amends Electoral Act, legalizes electronic voting. That's on page 4. And also NSC gets members' approval for public listing. That's on page 16. And the lead story on the Leadership today, Nigerian ports to achieve hub status as Nigerian shippers return. Nigerian ports to achieve hub status as Nigerian shippers return. With the riders' economy in gradual recovery, says President Muhammadu Buhari, and IMF calls for stronger policies to meet targets, commence CBN on forex policy. That story you can read up on page 5 of the Leadership. And below that, okay, just beside that, you would see, beside the picture story, 3 weeks after Abuja Airport, 57.5% completed. And of course, you can remember Kingsley, some stories that it might be extended 18 weeks more. And the minister has come out also to debunk that. Yes. That's not true.
After 3 weeks, Abuja runway. Abuja Airport runway. Not the airport.
Not the airport. And finally, why stakeholders are against NHIS bus. That's on page 5 of the Leadership. All right, Bayo.
Yes, let's talk about the Senate approval of electronic voting. This was after a clause-by-clause consideration of the report of its committee on INEC. Some of the issues raised there were the Commission shall adopt electronic voting in all elections or any other voting as may be determined by the Commission from time to time. Another area was INEC staff found to be a member of political party commits an offense and he is subject to imprisonment of 5 years or a fine of 5 million or both. Another amendment attempted to take care of the development that surrounded the death of Abubakar Audu in Kogi State. In such instance in future, Senate empowers the political party which candidate died to conduct fresh primary within 14 days and INEC to conclude elections within 21 days. It also authorizes the transfer of the votes scored by the deceased candidate to the new candidate. Another area of amendment is now the fixed amount for candidates or aspirants to be candidates of political parties. For a councillor, you will require 150,000. Local government chairman, 250,000. State assembly, 500,000. House of Assembly, 1 million. Senate, 2 million. To be a governor, 5 million. And to be president, 10 million. That is the fee that you will have to. So the political parties now don't have a choice. It's now prescribed and it cannot vary.
That is if it becomes law.
Well, that...
Because it's still a bill. I mean, that's, they're still working on the bill. Assuming the bill is passed by both houses and they reconcile whatever differences there, it still has to go to Mr. President for his assent.
Yes,
in the meantime, you have the Kenuna Money committee that is also working on electoral reform. So the committee is going to have to submit its report, come back again to the National Assembly. Or are we expending energies in different directions?
In fact, just only early this week at the House of Representatives, there was also an attempt to solve this problem of the electronic voting. Right. The minority that stood up categorically to say that the electronic voting is prohibited by the Constitution. Yes. And Aisha Duku, who had raised the issue, was in fact proposing that in the event of the death of a candidate, the deputy should step in. So there's a lot of room for concurrence and amendment.
What is required, I believe that whatever issues there are, whatever proposed amendments there are to the Constitution or to the Electoral Act, all of this should be harmonized in a single document, and then you consider it pass forward to the president for his accent or, withholding of his accent if he objects to any of the provisions. And then we have a clean document to which we can now speak to or relate. Bayo Atoyebe, of course, as always, we'd like to thank you for being with us all through the week. We'll see you on Monday, and I hope that you enjoy your weekend.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, Bayo Atoyebe, we just signed him off now. This is Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We take a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing a pretty serious subject matter, depression and suicidal tendencies.
Hear the call of change. Stand up, Nigeria. Change is here and it's going to stay. Change begins with you. Oh yeah, make we go. So let the change begin from within. Look at you, Ogerula. Change begins with you and me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me. Change begins with me.
Coming up, we visit David Daniele. In the 10 months since he appeared on Airtel Touching Lives, his Center for Citizens with Disabilities has gone from strength to strength.
Thank you, Airtel. We are glad that you came.
And for Emmanuel Onyeka, his dream of completing his studies has been dashed. A tragic Okada accident in 2015 had left him an amputee.
From the south to the northeast, southeast to the northwest, southwest to the north central, the Future Assured project and its component, Get Involved, is restoring hope to millions of Nigerian women and children.
We are actually doing a lot under Future Assured, the program of Her Excellency Mrs. Aisha Muhammadu Buhari. And I believe what we are doing so far is impacting positively on the lives of women and children in Nigeria, particularly those in the internally displaced camps across the nation.
Get Involved supports the Future Assured initiative. Email programs@futureassured.org.ng. Future Assured, promoting and protecting the lives of Nigerian women and children.
All right, welcome back. We are live on Africa's largest TV network, the NTA, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. This morning we're discussing something really serious, and that's depression and suicidal tendencies. Let's take a look at this background report put together by Timothy Yusuf, and of course we'll set the tone for our discussion this morning.
According to the World Health Organization, approximately 1 million people die of suicide every year. And for everyone who die, about 20 more have attempted suicide. Those who know say suicide is now one of the 3 leading causes of deaths among the youth, and that it is estimated that 75% of global suicides occur in low and middle income countries, including Nigeria. Common method of suicide are hanging, poison and firearms. In 2003, for instance, World Valued Survey ranked Nigerians among the happiest people in the world in a report. This was in spite of some obvious challenges confronting them. Furthermore, the United Nations recently ranked Nigerians as the 6th happiest people in Africa and 95th in the world. This implies that Nigerians are not only relatively happy, they are also hopeful that there is light at the end of the tunnel in the face of any problem that might have confronted them. But analysts believe that these assertions have been put to test by rising cases of suicide in the country in recent times. Among them is the suicide of a 26-year-old ex-banker in Lagos State. Many people were shocked that a young lady that was full of life could have killed herself. A Lagos politician was also said to have jumped into the Lagos Lagoon after he alighted from his car at the Leventis bus stop Marina. A case was also reported of a woman found dead in her brother's house after hanging herself. Just this month, a 35-year-old medical doctor, Orwell Oji, jumped into the Lagos Lagoon on the 3rd Mainland Bridge and died. There have been several questions on what may have prompted his action, but no answer has been provided, just speculations and rumors. While some believe evil forces might have manipulated him mysteriously and spiritually, others reckon it could be due to a mental disorder or depression. Also this month, a 500-level urban and regional planning undergraduate of a university in the southwest reportedly hanged himself inside his hostel room. Also, in January this year, a 19-year-old student of another university committed suicide in his parents' home in Lagos. These instances are just a few in the public domain, as there are several cases of suicide across Nigeria that were either concealed by the affected families for fear of stigmatization or not reported to the police or by the media. With suicide growing in leaps and bounds, the questions on the lips of many are why the increasing rate of suicide even among the youth and the rich? What problem or challenges could make one take his or her own life? While the increased rate in recent times, could it be because of the hardship or depression occasioned by the economic recession? Is government and Nigerians doing enough to curb the menace? Could the action have been intentional, psychological, or induced by unseen external forces?
Thank you very much, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. And of course, we have a great guest in the studio this morning to take a look at this issue that's coping with depression and suicidal tendency. First of all, I'd like to welcome Dr. Sunday. We have here joining us, first of all, Law Mefo, a psychologist who's in our studio this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
And now we'll go over to our Benin Network Center, where we're being joined by Dr. Sunday Olotu. He is the Managing Director, Federal Neuropsychiatric Hospital, Benin City. It's good to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Managing Director, Federal Neuropsychiatric Benin City. It's good to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Good morning.
All right, we're also being joined from our Lagos studio to discuss this issue. The State Commissioner of Police, Lagos State, Mr. Fatai Owoseni. You're welcome to the program.
Good morning.
All right, Ruda, thanks a lot. Now, I guess once again, we would like to welcome you to the program. We'll be joined later on by another guest from one of our other network centers. Now, let's begin this conversation by going back to our Benin Network Center, where Dr. Sunday Olotu was introduced a moment ago. He's the medical director of the psychiatric hospital at Uselu in Benin City. Now, Dr. Olotu, we're talking here about mental health, depression and suicidal tendencies. Can we have a better understanding of what depression is, how it manifests, what are the causative factors, and what it might then lead to? Of course, the other guests will have an opportunity of also responding to this question.
Good morning, viewers. Like you said, depression is one of the mental illnesses or mental disorder, and it is characterized by feelings of sadness and unhappiness, a loss of a sense of enjoyment and interest in things that used to interest the individuals, then a reduction in energy, and therefore a reduction in their ability or capacity to do work. You also have alterations in bodily functions, things like changes in sleep pattern, changes in appetite, and changes in weight gain. Then the mind also works in such a way that they see things in the negative, as in pessimism all the time. They feel hopeless, they feel worthless, and they feel guilty or feelings of guilt of various reasons, whether real or perceived to be real. Then they sometimes can have, in very severe cases, they will hear experiences that transcend normality. They will hear voices of people telling them they are whatsoever despicable entity or description, like you're a witch, you're a wizard, you are not good to be alive, you need to die, you are good for nothing, all those sorts of things. Those are usually characteristics of syndrome or the disorder called depression. And it's grouped into 3 different categories, depending on the availability or the presence of symptoms found. It can be mild, and it can be moderate, and it can be severe, depending on the aggregation of the symptoms you have found in interview of the patient or the client involved. And cause. To talk about cause, there is no one pinpointable cause. Like you will say about malaria, it is caused by Plasmodium XYZ of a species of mosquito. You don't have a specific cause for depression, but it's a complex interaction between so many factors. One, the factors of the body, as you call biological factors of the individual, factors of the environment, and factors of the psychological makeup of the person. It's the interaction of all these factors that sometimes create a vulnerability, sometimes create a susceptibility, and superimpose upon prevailing immediate circumstances of long-standing life difficulties or life events. You can have an interplay of all these factors to make people suffer from depression. In terms of the suicide angle, it is also said that the risk of suicide is one of the risks in people who suffer depression. And so that is where it connects, especially when they are feeling really, really down and bad and feeling hopeless, helpless, and worthless. Sometimes it can happen that they kill themselves. Remedies. Depression is a treatable disease, quite treatable. The mild ones, you can do talking therapy, and that may be it. Sometimes, depending on the individual case in question, you can also add drug therapy. The moderate to the severe one, definitely you need to do a combination of things, which may involve drug therapy, talking therapy, and environmental manipulation of whatsoever situation that may have been found to be attributable to the onset of the depression of the person. It's a complex of things like that that you need to deal with to treat depression. And in a given range of between 9 to 12 months, one should be able to treat a depression very well to recovery. And you now maintain the patient on whatsoever has worked for that individual patient for up to about 2 years. Thereafter, you can, depending on other factors in play, you can say the patient is recovered and free to continue his or her life as the case may be. I'll stop here at this point.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Sunday Olotu, Medical Director of Uselu. That's the Neuropsychiatric Hospital in Benin. Quite detailed explanation there you've given to us. But then I'd like to come to a psychologist here in the studio, and that's Law Mefo. The question that comes to mind is, why would a person want to take his or her life? And what could be the factors responsible for this?
It's rather a very complex one. You don't even, like the doctor that spoke from Benin said, you hardly can find a single factor. It's usually a mix of so many factors. Biological, environmental, social, economic, financial. So many things come together. Even though the trigger may be one, right? But they act in concert with, allied factors to generate that condition. First and foremost, one thing runs through all of them. The individual has lost the interest to live. Life no longer makes a meaning. There is this feeling of, helplessness, hopelessness, and those of them that are able to talk, to somebody, you will see them actually saying that they want to go. Let's live here for you. I don't understand what I'm saying. Yes. It's as if you see that there is that underpinning, a feeling of not being wanted, right? That the person no longer belongs. And you see, when it comes to that level, you hardly can say, okay, take for instance, the case of a Dr. Orwell Oji, that plunged into the lagoon in Lagos a few days ago. You can't say his problem was really poverty. Do you understand what I'm saying? So there are other factors. He had a paying job, chauffeured and all that. So basically he had the basics to live a good life. And yet he took that decision. Let me give you one reason why such can happen. You see, depression, psychotic depression, like the doctor said, some of them come with a command, right? Psychosis generally, they go with two essential characteristics. One is delusion. The other is hallucination. Delusion is false belief. When you falsely believe what is not true, what is false. When you believe is contrary to what every other person believes, and you hold on to that belief despite the existence of facts to the contrary. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That means
we understand.
you alone on that. Then the hallucinatory aspect of it, you are seeing and hearing things that are not out there. So what you hear could be a command. Yeah. The command may be to take your own life or take another person's life.
But then I was going to ask you, there seems to be an increase in rates. And what baffles a lot of people is that we're looking at very young people with bright future. We're looking at rich people. We're not looking, when we talk about depression before now, we would say, oh, probably these are older people who have, had to deal with issues of life, or people who poverty, maybe they're ill or something. But now we're looking at an increase in rates, especially amongst the young people. It's alarming.
There is a research now done by Nigerian psychiatrists just a few weeks ago, implicating 12% of the teenage population in Nigeria as having attempted suicide. So it's confirming your position. And it's alarming. It means that every 10 teenagers you see, 1 to 2 have actually attempted, unsuccessfully though. But it shows that really, there's a big problem. The social condition, the pressure, the value system has taken, our value system has been turned upside down. You see the young ones, what they look up to, who they look up to, no longer add up to a happy life. Take, for instance, the issue of our education. There's a young boy that took his life the other day. You know why? He took his life because the father told him he dare not, fail his WAEC. When he failed, he couldn't confront the father, right? And he took his life. This is just one example. There are others that, bear different dimensions of this, but they are all pointing to the same thing. That look, the system is no longer socially supported. You are essentially on your own. And the economic condition is not helping matters. And, the value system, I keep talking about value system because in psychology, what we worry about is the thinking, cognition, what you are thinking. Once the attitude is not right, once what you are thinking about is not right, the result can be anything. And as long as you're on that negative path and you are progressing on it, and it cannot work out in real life. For example, the average Nigerian graduate wants his first car to be a Jeep. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Something is wrong with that pattern of thought.
That is hallucination.
No, it's not really. It's delusion. It's delusion because it's delusional because you know that your present condition cannot justifiably, earn you this. Fetch you this. Let me. If your first car is a Jeep, what will your third car be?
It will be an aircraft.
Yes, an aircraft.
All right, so Mr. Lawmefor, thank you very much. We'll come back to that. I mean, these are some of the challenges, of course, that medical personnel and others, who are in clinical practice often would encounter. We had introduced the Commissioner of Police for Lagos, Mr. Fatai Owosone. He's still with us. But just before, we pop our first question to him to see how these incidents of attempted suicide or depression manifest on the street, on the homes, let's return to our Benin Network Center. Dr. Sunday Olotu. Dr. Sunday Olotu, can we have, from your perspective, a general picture of the state of mental health in Nigeria, and therefore what conduces to the rate of depression that we're having, and then to the incidence of suicide. How mentally healthy are Nigerians in general?
Mental health is a state of well-being of an individual vis-a-vis being at peace with the environment. It's some sort of equilibrium between the external environment and the individual. So it is subjectively defined and can also be extended to a population definition. It is what the society will detect as a good mental health that will be accepted or acceptable in every given society as good mental health. You can also statistically quantify what a good mental health is. If 95% of a given society or population falls within the norms that that society has defined as good mental health, then that is what mental health is in general and in specific. There are various types of mental illness and mental disorder. And it is said that 10 to 20% of a given population will be suffering from a given mental health at every given time. And about 1 to 5% will be suffering from a particular mental illness at every given time. So there are issues of mental disorders. At the same time, there are issues of well-being in every given society, pari passu. Now, the prevalence for depression, 12-month prevalence in global information, global statistics, is about 5 to 10. But in Nigeria, is about 1%. Then lifetime is about 10 to 20 globally, but in Nigeria, is about 1%. Which means in Nigeria society, there is a departure from the global rates of prevalence. So we would say that in Nigeria society is a bit better off in terms of well-being and welfare. Vis-a-vis that report that says Nigerians are the most happiest persons in the world several years ago, and recently 6th happiest nation. So it simply means we had a good mental health as a nation prior to this time. Because we had things like the family support system was good. We had an economy that was good. We had things that were working fine until recently that things started departing from the paradigm of being acceptably good to the paradigm of being harsh and unacceptable. But generally, we will say, until you look at the individual cases, you will say that everyone is mentally stable until proven otherwise. But like we said, the risk of suicide is particularized, associated with depression. Not only with depression, there are other psychiatric disorders and illnesses that connotes a risk for suicide. People who also suffer schizophrenia, sometimes they will have a risk of suicide, depending on how severe the case is. People who use drug and alcohol, hard drugs like cocaine, Indian hemp, and other related hard substances, can also have the risk of suicide. People who suffer very acutely from what we call severe excruciating stressful life situations and circumstances can also have the risk of committing suicide. People who suffer from dementia, in which they now behave, adults or elderly persons who behave like stupid children, they also have the risk of committing suicide. So these are various paradigms of mental problems or disorders that can predispose to suicide, depending on immediate prevailing circumstances.
All right, Dr. Olotu, well, thanks a lot. Well, we'll come back to you in the course of the conversation, but just before we go over to our other network center, I'm tempted to ask this question. From your center, and I'm sure of interaction with other neuropsychiatric hospitals in the country, there's one at Yaba, the so-called Yaba bus stop by the left, another one at Aro in Abeokuta, and perhaps elsewhere in the country. Do we have an indication of the sexes or the age brackets of persons most susceptible to depression, and then they climb out to suicide?
Yes. Females are more affected with depression. Then there is an increase in the general caseload we see from dating back to 2, 3, 5 years now. Then the risk, the depression, yes, spans through an age range from 15 to late middle ages. People can suffer from depression. But even in the elderly, 60 and above, you can still have depression. But the risk of suicide is more within the age bracket of 15 to 39, 40.
All right, Dr. Sunday Olotu, thank you very much. We still retain you, but let's go over to our our Lagos Network Center, where we still have with us the Commissioner of Police for Lagos State, Mr. Fatai Owoshede. Mr. Owoshede, you've had the benefit of listening to the psychiatrist as well as the psychologist who are at different locations. A sociologist, of course, will be joining us shortly. He's also a criminologist, a family officer of Good Morning Nigeria. But from the data that your command gathers, of course, Lagos is Nigeria's commercial nerve center, and one of the incidents that occurred in terms of suicide took place, one of the iconic landmarks in the state. What do you have, maybe over a period of time, with regard to street or home manifestation of depression and suicide?
The expert have spoken, and of course, I will not be able to handle some of these things as those experts who are in the medical field. But I would slightly, while supporting them, I would also say that suicide can not just be said to be caused by depression. We will still be having difficulties as to what are those factors that made people to commit suicide. In as much as it's not a case where if you do an autopsy of the body, a postmortem, that postmortem can give you the result. The results and the causes of some of the cases of this suicide can be found from homes. And why it will be difficult to also get the root cause is because there is the conspiracy of silence, because of stigmatization. So most of the people that know the reasons why a particular person must have committed suicide would not want to say it out, especially family, so that they won't stigmatize the family to say, oh, in this family, this prevails. That is one aspect of it that I have seen. Another thing is the fear of the consequences of action, because in some of those suicide cases that we've recorded, you find out that maybe someone has done something to another person. It could be a criminal offense, like in situations where someone had killed and he felt that, oh, yes, the punishment for me is going to be that I'm also going to be killed. He instantly killed himself. And that is why I'm saying that other reasons could be adduced for people taking their lives. When it comes to statistics as well, I won't be able to give an exact figure now, but in the recent past, I can say that at least in the month of March, if there is any at all, we've recorded just like about 2-3 cases. It's just the methods that people are using now. I will call some of them attention seekers, especially the ones that we've been able to rescue. If they're not attention seekers, why would someone leave his or her home? There are other ways that the person could have died before getting to Third Mainland Bridge, like the case of an elderly person we had on Sunday, a 65-year-old person who left Ibafo and got to Third Mainland Bridge and attempted to jump into the river. From Ibafo to the Third Mainland Bridge, that was the beggar bridge that also has a water. Why did the person not enter the water there? So at the end of the day, for that 65-year-old person, we find out that he had been a patient at the psychiatric hospital at Yaba. But could it be that some people just want attention by moving from one place to the other to go and do this? So there'll still be a lot of questions that would not be able to answer appropriately. And as to the increase, we should also look at the factor of demography. If we believe that the more people, the more human beings we have in a place, the tendency to have increase in the good things they do and in the bad things they do. So if you have 20 persons in the country last year, and this year you have 100 persons, there's also the tendency that the number of people that will want to commit offense, or the number of people that will want to kill themselves, will be a little bit higher than when you have 20 persons. And that's from the perspective of how we want to look at it.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Fatai Wushani. That's the Commissioner of Police at Lagos State. But then let's come back to our guest here in the studio, Law Mefo, before we join our guest who will be joining us from our Just Network Center. Mr. Fatai said something just now that is very key, and that is stigma. What is the general, let's look at the general attitude of people towards people who have mental issues or have issues of depression. And then if you look at the cases that have occurred lately, a lot of Nigerians seem to take this very lightly. People are laughing about it. People just see it as though it's nothing. And when maybe you attempt suicide, the stigma is just so much. Are we doing enough? Is government doing enough? The families, are they doing enough? Especially friends, are we doing enough? Especially towards people who have mental issues or depression?
Yeah. Let me drop just a word on what CP said. You know, when we talked about depression, the man in Benin, right? He gave you a clinical picture of how depression can, be. But then, remember I told you that something will have to trigger it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And in fact, before you commit suicide, depression must have set in. You must have talked to yourself that you have to do this. And that process of talking to yourself is depressive. It ends in depression. The causative factors may not be primarily depression. I don't know if you understand what I said, but it ultimately ends in it. Stress. Stress. All of us don't manage stress the same way. Some are very resilient, some are not. Some will not be able to take certain things. And there is what you call honor killing, right? Some take their own lives to save, to sort of save their face, right? Save something like that, just to go away. Now, coming to your question, you see, truly and truly, government is not doing enough. How many, psychiatric homes do you have in Nigeria? We just counted Aro, counted another in Yaba, maybe one or two others, right? And that is it. For a population of how many? 170 million? Possibly 180 million of us. That is a far cry. How many psychiatrists do you have in Nigeria? How many clinical psychologists do you have in Nigeria? So you don't have the base to really tackle this. Now, you talked about the family. You implicated the family clearly. One of the reasons we said that Nigerians are the happiest...
Because you see families where you have people who have mental issues and they're shielding or they're hiding it.
That's it.
They don't want to talk about it. They don't want people to know that,
I know.
The family members.
It's cultural. It's cultural. Nobody... In fact, if you want to marry or get married, right? And one of the things they do is to inquire into the family, of the suitor or the would-be bride. And what do they want to find out? Do you know the essential things they want to find out? Is there a history of madness in the... Do you understand that? So they believe in wrongs in the family. They would want to protect the members of the family, because if people learn that such a thing can be traced to their family, they believe every other person has a tendency of reacting in that way.
All right.
That is to say that if you don't manifest it today, you can't manifest that tomorrow.
Okay, Mr. Law Mefo, thank you very much. Let's go over now to our Jos Network Center, where Professor Etanibi Alemeka, of course, is joining us. He's of the University of Jos. In most cases, he joins us from our Abuja studios. Professor Alemeka, pleasure to have you today. All right, straight away, Professor Alemeka, I'm sure you've had the benefit of listening to the other three guests who have spoken on this subject. Let's get your opening salvo on, the, if you like, the sociology of depression and suicidal tendencies.
Well, I think I will start like Commissioner Owoseni says, that depression is not the only source of suicidal instinct or suicidal attempt. There are other factors, and I think I need to start with this warning. Many of the drugs, medication for antidepressant, unfortunately themselves can create suicidal instincts or suicidal thoughts. So, and in Nigeria, very often mental health specialists don't inform their patients of that tendency. So I want to start with that warning, that even in an attempt to help patients, you might actually be prescribing drugs that increase the, at another level, the possibility of suicidal attack. But now coming back, from a sociological point of view, we think suicide results from two basic factors or two basic experiences in life. One, which of course I think the medical, the psychiatrists and the psychologists have talked about, is when an individual feels disconnected from society. When an individual feels disconnected, whether economically, financially, socially, the tendency of suicidal attacks is likely, because suicidal attempt is likely because the person, as has been said by the psychologists, feel worthless, feel unwanted, and in that respect, coincidentally or ironically, the other extreme is also true, where an individual is so committed to a society that believes he cannot live without the recognition of that society, and when he behaves in a particular way that he believes he will be sanctioned, may take his life. Or in fact, we can see that in some form of extreme patriotism, where people are willing to die for their country just because the national team lost a football match. That is another, another extreme. So from a sociological point of view, it's a continuum from alienation from society to an extreme, extreme situation where society is constituted in such a way that individuals are expected to conform without any form of disagreement, which can create a pressure on individuals also when they fall out of line to commit suicide. In between this, of course, there are different levels of causes. I would think that the ultimate beginning is for us to begin to look at the problem in Nigeria. And again, I think the psychologists, both psychologists and psychiatrists have mentioned that, is that fact that we've lost all social connections in this country due to a variety of factors. We start from both the family. The family today is more an economic unit rather than a social unit. And that is, I think, the core situation we have today. So it is not surprising that we're having young people committing suicide because the family has become unstable. They may be rich, they may be prosperous, but there are no connections between members of the family. They are connected by phone. In the evening, the father is not there. He's probably running around to make ends or to hit the jackpot from somewhere. The mother is hardly around too because he's gone to Dubai. The children are left at home with a 50-inch screen, which they watch, and of course, they watch foreign films. There are all that has gone wrong with the family. And I think this is the beginning of our crisis. So a child that is raised in that connection, he comes to the real life, he's unable to fathom out many of that, and he had no home to return to for support. And I think that's the difference between what we used to call the suicide rate in advanced countries before, and of course we are now witnessing. In advanced countries, it is the breakdown of the family structure, of the social networks, of the social support that created the high level of suicide, especially by young people, we're probably getting into that phase because, again, we're not careful enough to maintain what is very important on us, for us, which is the social network, the social support, the extended family system, the care for the young people through this extended network. So I think we need to fathom in the social factors that ultimately may be the one that tend to generate those feeling of incompetence, those feeling of guilt. But also we need to understand that a society must also allow for a lot of space for people to be individuals. When you force them to be alike, the tendency is also when they fall out of line, they are not able to handle it, and the feeling of guilt may also trigger a lot of tendency towards suicide. So I think we have a broad-based set of factors that may lead to suicidal attempt or actually successful suicide. One other thing also, from again to my colleagues in psychiatry and psychology, is that I think people are beginning to change the name of psychiatry to reflect the hospitals. And I think this is part of the stigmatization problem. Can we change, instead of neuropsychiatry or psychiatric cases, psychiatric disorder, can we talk about mental health? I think that will help in our system to reduce the stigmatization. Even the use of word also can be a problem in terms of health-seeking behavior for those who have challenges with, with those problems of mental health. I think we all, at one point, I think it's the psychiatry who say, we all get mad at one point in time in the course of our lifetime. So it is not a stable condition, and as it said, I think we need more of social support. And in this respect, with respect to government, I think we can reduce the problem on the family by making social services work again.
All right,
thank you very much. Why is it impossible for us to reinvent public schools? Why is it impossible to reinvent public hospitals, public health services? We joke with friends. They said the best, most experienced, most competent doctors are in public hospital, but the best equipments are in the private hospital. Again, that is what we've done to education. The best, I will argue, the best, the most competent lecturers are in public universities, but the best infrastructure, the best building, the attractive infrastructure are in private universities. Can we not find a standard where an average person, an average citizen can actually, expect to live in this country on the, just using social services, public services, without having to go to the stress of going through looking for economically prized goods and services that are important for social existence. I think I'll give other options to comment.
All right, Professor Alebika, thank you very much for your insights. We'll come back to you in the course of the conversation. We'll also return to Dr. Sunday Olotu at our Benin Network Center to respond to some of the issues we raised, particularly with regard to the administration of antidepressants as one of the likely triggers for suicidal tendencies, and then the alteration from the psychiatric hospital to a mental health institution or otherwise. But as to be expected, we have reactions from our viewers taking advantage of our Twitter handle at NTAGM. So we'll take some of those tweets now before we go back to the Benin Network Center.
All right, our very first tweet is from Comrade Tomori Abdul. He says, if depression is an illness, according to WHO, can doctors cure it? And if yes, how does one report depression cases? Thanks.
Okay. And then we have James Oluwatosin tweets, we still live below the poverty line, so poverty can cause depression.
Nonye Umai tweets, the level of stress in Nigeria is worrisome.
And then we have this from Festus Akimboyewa. Thanks for this discussion about depression and suicidal tendencies, because most Nigerians view discussing this subject as socially unacceptable.
Festus Akimboyewa tweets, thanks to Dr. Olotu, but the severe self-criticism, hopelessness, marginalization, and stigmatization also contribute to suicide.
Ibeneme Dominic has this tweet, the rise in individualistic living of this age is a key factor. Upbringing too, Children are trained far from reality of life by their parents.
And Idris Gidadu Aliyu tweets, let's keep praying and hoping for a better Nigeria.
And Dilip Jack Solomon, Nigerians have never had it so economic bad like this. Nowadays, we can see the emergence of psycho clinics everywhere.
Innocent Lauer James tweets, a lot of things beyond human control, like unseen forces, were behind all this. Depression and economic recession isn't an excuse, but religious activities also.
Dayo Isaac Ojediron, no one wants to die if everything is going on fine with them. Depression sets in when there are unmet expectations. People need encouragement.
And Comrade Tomori Abdul tweets again, it's very prominent in recent times as a result of the recession that led to depression.
Taro Patrick, it's just a reflection of the hard times people are experiencing and the inability to manage such situations.
And the Festus Akimboyewa tweets again, criminalizing, marginalizing, stigmatizing people with mental health problem can lead them to suicide, and it should be stopped. Those are the tweets that we're getting right now. But then remember, you can join us in this conversation by tweeting at us at NTAGMN. Right now, I would like to go to our Benin Network Center where we have Dr. Olotu. Dr. Olotu, as you speak to the issues that Professor Alemika raised, that is the use of antidepressants and also issues of the issue of antidepressants and also changing, psychiatric hospitals to mental health institutions so that people can actually go there without being stigmatized. I'd also like you to speak to the issues of people who have suicidal tendencies, who have issues, but they're very into themselves. You can't tell, because the issues that we've seen lately, you see people say, oh, I was with them today or I was with them yesterday. I didn't know. So how can I identify someone who has suicidal tendencies? What are the signs that I could see and say this person is becoming depressed?
Yeah, thank you so very much. I will start from the issue of training and the use of treatment and the use of antidepressant. Like I said earlier on, treatment is usually threefold. One, talking therapy. Two, the use of antidepressant. And three, manipulation of the environment. That is to say, dealing physically with the stressors or stressful situations, circumstances, or events that molds around the emergence of the depression. It's these three-tier methods that depression is treated with. And in all cases, you don't use the three at the same time. It's case-specific and treatment is individualized to the person that is suffering from depression. Now, specifically for drug treatment has come a long way from the very, very useful, effective, but heavily side effect monoamine reuptake inhibitors to newer drugs that are as well very effective, but with milder and fewer side effects. The issues of drug causing people to commit suicide, you can't entirely say it's correct, but you also cannot entirely say it's incorrect, because drugs have side effects. And side effects are individualistic to patients. Side effects can also be idiosyncratic. That is to say, something that is least expected to happen, it happens. So it is not entirely right to say the treatment of depression causes people or patients suffering from depression to commit suicide. And before you give treatment to any patient, you have a total information of what led to this state that the patient is, and you have formulated the patient's treatment. And to the best of the knowledge of the therapist and the doctor, you are using those information to choose the medication that will be best fitted to this person and to this type of depression and at this material time. And the teaching in medicine is, in all your doings, do no harm. There's no psychiatrist or a doctor that will intentionally use a medication that will lead a patient to suicide. life is the best treasure God has given to man, and no one will use a medication that will cause someone else to die. So that should be discountenanced, because it will go a long way to discouraging people who will want to come forth for treatment for depression. Because one of the things we already suffer in depression is that it is underreported. Even suicide, it is underreported, it is underdiagnosed. And so if we say outrightly that the use of drug makes people to commit suicide, you are going to further create a problem. That is not true. The second point about renaming the hospital, yes, it is a valid point that will help in medicalizing psychiatry. That is to say, making psychiatry friendlier to the general population and to the society at large. In individual hospitals, psychiatric hospitals in the country, we are already cognizant of this, and we are taking steps already. Like in some hospitals, we already have what we call NHIS clinic in psychiatric centers and hospitals in the country. We already have some places where we have general staff medical center or general medical center in psychiatric hospitals in the country. We have in Uselu in Benin City, there is one in Aro, there is one in one of the other sister hospitals, I think Kaduna and so. It is one direction in destigmatizing and discriminating against psychiatric issues. We've also discussed this issue of changing the name. In our last 2-3 meetings of MDs of psychiatric hospitals, we have discussed trying to change this name. But it will take several halls of issues of parliament and legislation that it has to be, because the names were an act of parliament, an act. So it also has to change by an act of parliament. So it's going to take some processing that we need to take the whole hall through. But we all know the kind of difficulties we have in trying to change laws and change things in this country. But by God's grace, we started taking the step, and we hope that we'll get there someday. Talking about identification of persons or patients who may want to commit suicide, it is known in the parlance of psychiatry and psychology that in the very near hours or few days before anyone commits suicide, they will say, they will mention, they will give a sign. All you have to do is just be particular about that sign. They will mention that they want to kill themselves, and don't take it lightly.
Dr. Sunday Olotu, thank you very much. We'll still come back to you to respond to some of the traditional practices that we have seen in terms of attempts at dealing with mental health issues. I'm sure you're familiar with some of those ones. They chain people down, beat the hell out of them, thinking that they want to beat the devil out of such persons. We'll come back to you to take that. But still, in terms of public reaction or public comments on this, our correspondent went out to speak to a cross-section of Nigerians, and this is what they have to say with regard to depression and suicidal tendencies.
I don't think something can cause me to take my life, because I'm not the one who created myself. God that created me for a purpose. And biblically, he said, with God, everything is possible. Then, if I'm taking my life, which means I'm telling God that everything is not possible.
I just feel those persons are misinformed. There's no reason for you to want to commit suicide. If you have a family, I think it's enough. You may not necessarily have all you want in life. But I feel there's really nothing, whatever it is in this life is not so serious to want to make you commit suicide. I think it's evil. It's evil, and it's bad omen too.
People committing suicide, they are indisciplined. They think life is a bed of roses. Life is not made like that. God did not create life to be like that. God created the world as a place for trials. It is when those who are tried, they succeed in those trials that they can inherit the hereafter. If you commit suicide, definitely the person who commits suicide goes to hell. God has mentioned that whoever commits suicide have committed a crime will go to hell. So people should work hard to overcome life trials.
That suicide, this life, there's challenge every day, and sufficient enough, we will trust God every day, whatever the challenge is, that whatever comes, we know that we'll pass through. But to commit suicide is against the will of God. To commit suicide, I don't think anything.
What I knew that made some people to take their life is not ordinary. It's manipulation from the underworld. Maybe somebody that's not prayerful. Because once the manipulation comes, they hold it on the air. They send such things on the air. So when they throw it on the air, it affects. If that person do not run to God, there is no pastor, no imam, or a Christian church that can assist that person except the Almighty God. Because it is divine that the healing or the deliverance can come. But some people, when such manipulation comes their way, what they will do is that they will just listen to that voice. There must be a voice speaking to that person. Do this. This is, in fact, your life have ended. Maybe one thing strikes. Because they will manipulate that person through one or two other people. And at the end of the day, the person will see his life as if he's not worth it again.
All right, now you have the views of a cross-section of Nigerians commenting on depression and then suicidal tendencies, with all kinds of palpitations. Let's return to Lord Mefor with us in the Abuja studios. Again, you listen to those comments about...
This is my sister.
Yes, they just say that, there is a voice, some spiritual attack which is released, of course, there is a biblical passage about there being principalities and all kinds of dangerous elements in the lower realm. But these are things that people contemplate.
As a psychologist, we do not try to wish away some spiritual contents in what people do. But we do know that all those spiritual issues find their manifestation. They present in our normal life. So if you can deal with the observable behavior, why don't you focus on that and leave the esoteric to be where it is, to belong to where it is? See, my sister in the voice pop talked about a command from somewhere. I told you earlier that issue of hallucination, which is present in all psychotic conditions, is hearing or seeing what is not out there. It's a psychiatric and psychological condition. It's not necessarily, one old woman commanding you from the village, but that is the impression we get. Some people cannot even go home because they believe their uncles and their aunts and all that are after them. That is not true. We have prevalence of mental disorders. Look, if we give you a list of mental disorders, you'll be wondering who is really free, who is really normal. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Can you itemize some of them? Let's...
Look, you see, if you come to what we just talked about, depression has what you call bipolar, the one that comes with mania and depression at the same time, mood swing. You are happy now, you are unhappy next time. You don't get it. That is bipolar. There is a problem. You see, the person is boisterous 1 minute, the other minute he's withdrawn into himself, not wanting to be talked to by anybody. You have problem of hypochondriasis, people who feel some bodily symptoms, but these symptoms of ailment, biologically you don't find any problem. These are thought processes, bottled up emotions, stress that are just trapped in there, finding, trying to push out in one way or the other, finding expressions, even in things like paralysis. Some people can feel paralysis, they completely unable to walk, completely unable to even talk, and they have no biological basis for doing so. It's not any spiritual problem. It's stress. Nigerians need to understand this. The mental ailments is prevalent, and it is normal for people to feel sick. We fall sick in two ways. Physiologically, that's through your body, or mentally. Mental illness is the same thing as biological ailment, and they all have treatments. So why should people shy away from this? That is where the problem is. We need to understand that as long as we are alive, the wear and tear of life, which we call stress, must be there. And it will come with various manifestations.
Are people being made to understand that there is a solution to everything, especially when you have people who don't talk to people? People don't share their problems anymore. You can't tell what is wrong until they commit the act.
The problem is very clear. You know, the social support system that we have enjoyed as Africans is vanishing. Africans have been known, Nigerians have been known for what we call extended family system and things like that. All that is vanishing. People are now essentially on their own. Urbanization has been a major factor. In the urban centers, people are essentially on their own. You don't know your neighbor. You don't visit your neighbors. You don't, you know, the other day, the security, they were talking about, they were asking, do you know your neighbor? But ask yourself, how many of your neighbors do you know? How many of them do you have their phone numbers? People, you know, people fall sick and die in their homes, and nobody discovers until days after.
All right. Mr. Lermefort, thank you very much. Let's return to the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Fatai Owoshoni. Again, of course, you've been listening to the experts, and indeed, you are an expert, you know, in your own right. But let's look at the kind of cases, you know, you are having to deal with in terms of, you know, the blotter reports that your men and officers, you know, turn in. Do you find instances where perhaps, you know, some criminal incidents, you know, are related to what have been described as either the clinical or social manifestation of depression? That's one question. Second question. Now, the law is clear that suicide is not a punishable offense because you can't prosecute the dead. But of course, if there is procurement, then there is an offense. But attempted suicide is an offense. Has the Lagos Police Command at any point in time tried to prosecute any cases of attempted suicide?
I will start from that. We have few cases ongoing of attempted suicide. And of course, let me also digress a bit. In trying to find answers to some of the questions that have been raised, I think researchers and experts should probably be talking more to those ones that attempted suicide that we've had interactions with. And from there, maybe we'll be able to get answers. And one of the things that I want us to probably take our mind off is everyone has been talking of recession, but you find out cases where you even interacted with those ones that have attempted suicide, and you try to solve their problems, and you see them coming up with some other problems because they've seen help. And the copycat syndrome, in quote, that we have in this country, where people think, oh, because this person has done it, I should do it. We have that syndrome in this country. We copy things that are bad, we copy things that are good. Then also finding solution. All the people that have spoken, they've mentioned one clear thing: the society, the family. We have to start from the family. We need to probably go back to live in truth. Living in truth as in having full disclosure. As family members, we should be truthful to ourselves. As in, okay, we know that this person in the family suffers this. We can help. We can talk to each other. We can share our problems with people. In as much as we don't live in truth in this country, we would continue to hide things, and we would not be getting helpers. That is one. Then society at large, we also need to look at, in those days, there are recreation centers. You now see places that, you don't even have places where children can, vent up some of the things they've bottled up, including adults. You see houses close together, areas that people otherwise use to recreate, to probably go out and sit down and reflect on certain things, and in the process see people around to talk to them. We've closed all these places up, and we need to look at that as well. As to your first question, with cases that we've had, I think, as I started, answers would be gotten more from family members. Attempted suicide is a criminal offense. It's a misdemeanor though. But in the course of wanting to prosecute some of these people, you will now hear them to say, I don't want to die again. In fact, God forbid, it's not in my portion to die. And they now bring up sentiment, and you see other people coming up with sentiment as well to say, are you going to solve his problem by sending him to prison? And that also influenced some of the ways we handle some of these cases. So that is why we've been treating some of those cases on individual to individual basis. But my take, and what I probably want us to look at more is, reinventing the value system that had been lost, and for the society to accept that there is depression. We have this belief that they will say depression is not a sickness for the black people. No, we need to accept that we have this around. We need to talk to ourselves. Family needs to bond more. The society also needs to get back to those values that we've been sharing, that we've been using to solve our problems. And that is what I would want to part away with.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Fatai Wosheni. Thank you so much for your insight on our topic this morning. And it's always a pleasure to have you join us on Good Morning Nigeria. I hope we have opportunity to talk to you again next time. Thank you for coming. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, of course, we'll get the closing thoughts of our guests and, of course, take more of your tweets. We'll be back in just a moment.
Vote for me, and I will turn night into day.
Vote me, I will ban for more importation. Everybody will start eating turkey and chicken.
Put me in power, and I will bring winter to West Africa.
I'll turn all the taxi into plane.
Campaign promises. Another hilarious episode of Professor John Bull, your rib-cracking comedy. Find out the true gist of election violence, betrayals, and promises as Olani goes head-to-head with Udo.
You have money. Who you mean?
Showing at 8:30 p.m. every Tuesday and Friday on NTA Network International and Star Times.
By the time I become the chairman, I will make you my special advisor.
Why not go make me money advisor?
What is wrong with you, my daughter? That is why people will look at politicians as thieves.
Over and out.
Brought to you by Glow.
Welcome to the new speed.
People from different parts of the world can even come and they enjoy themselves with their loved one. Even some of the pictures I took in this place, in fact, people are asking me whether I'm from London. I tell them this is our Owerri.
This is a rescue mission project, tourism in Imo. The Imo Rescue Mission. Imo must be better.
Savlon leaves you free to live more and do more. It's formulated by Johnson & Johnson to kill over 99.9% of germs on skin.
100% Henshaw Productions specially invites you to the movie sometime in September. Directed by Iyara Emmanuel DGN. Chairman Mr. Donald Duke, former governor, Cross River State. Chief host Henshaw Emmanuel. Date 2nd April 2017. World Autism Awareness Day. Venue Silverbird Cinema, Abuja. Time 5 p.m. Red carpet, 6 p.m. main event. For inquiries, call Ayaba on 0803-592-7275 or Henshaw on 0018-331-3357.
All right, you're welcome back. Let's quickly take some of your reactions now before we get the closing thoughts of our guests. Cecilia Okoroma tweets, increase in suicide rates in Nigeria is as a result of our competitive and false lifestyle.
Festus Akingboyewa tweets, in economic recession, government should not only invest in roads and rails, it should invest in mental health so that people can get help.
And then we have this tweet coming in from Ibeneme Dominic. I still commend Nigerians. Expose Americans to our society and see the level of suicide. We are not that bad, but need to improve.
And Clifford Ugosi tweets, we should also look at the pharmacology of depression and suicidal attack. Every medicine or drug has a side effect.
Olaniyi Emmanuel tweets, depression can be controlled and managed with loads of love from our family, friends, and community. Let the change love begin from you.
And Alhaji Nucleson tweets, challenges in life is natural. The problem today is that no one is listening and no one wants to talk.
All right, Jide Mutiu tweets, depression is increasing due to loss of family values or structure in Nigeria. Our society is more individualistic today.
Tunde Emmanuel tweets, a situation where honesty and patriotism are persecuted by those who are known to be dishonest can elicit suicide tendencies.
All right, those are some of the reactions we are taking. Dr. Sunday Olotu from our Benin Network Center, Medical Director of the Neuropsychiatric Hospital at Uselu in Benin City. Let's get your closing thoughts very briefly in terms of care for mental health patients. You know, as I said, there are some traditional methods where people get chained or get flogged and so on and so forth. What should, in your opinion, be the proper approach and counseling for families, you know, who get their wards or relatives through such processes?
My advice is that they should discourage themselves from using them as a first venture. Presently, 77 out of 10 will first go to those people. But they create more problems for us when they eventually get to us and complicate the cases. So my advice is, depression is not a death sentence. It's like every other medical illness, hypertension, malaria, asthma, cardiac, whatever. It's like every other illness. Come straight to the expert, psychiatric hospitals, and get treatment. It is treatable, it is curable, depending on the factors associated with it.
All right, Dr. Sunday Olotu, we'd like to thank you for your expertise and your insights in our conversation this morning. And then also straight on to Professor Etonibi Olemika. Professor Olemika, again, of course, we haven't had enough time to squeeze you for more comments today, but what, in your opinion, should be our proper orientation to potential suicides or cases of depression? What, in your opinion, do we need to do as community, as family, and as government?
I think first we need public enlightenment, and then, of course, about the symptoms, about the conditions that predispose. And we also need to enlightenment about the various actors, from the family to religious institutions to government, about factors and services that are required to both prevent and then, of course, to mitigate cases of depression and suicidal tendencies. And, of course, those who have any kinds of difficulties should be willing to talk to friends, to family members, on how to find solutions. Let me just close with this comment again, because I feel really concerned about it. Dr. Olotu had said it's not correct that some antidepressant medication can be, a side effect for some people, suicidal tendency. I beg to disagree. Just pick any of the major antidepressant purchased in advanced country. You will find a warning. You'll find a warning on the label saying that this drug may in fact have that side effect, especially among people below 26 years of age. They are very specific, 26 years of age. Pick any of them and you'll see that. I do have some basic training in psychiatry and interconnection with crime. And so I'm not totally ignorant about that, field, about some interconnection between psychiatric situation and behavior. So we shouldn't discourage our people, but we should also have full disclosure about the pharmacological consequences of some of these drugs. That's all I'm saying, that, that is part of the enlightenment, that the medical practitioner should not hide in an attempt to help the side effects of some of these drugs. Overall, I think we shouldn't be too quick to say that there is increase. There might be actually a better reporting of depression cases and especially suicides. We shouldn't be too quick to say there had been an increase because reporting can make a difference. So I just want to give this warning, but I want to encourage a public enlightenment. I want to not just enlightenment about the causes, but enlightenment about responsibilities of the family, responsibilities of government. A wise suggestion. I think the children are put under so much pressure. So I want to have this wise suggestion. Any woman, maybe the man, if he chooses to take that position, any woman who has a child below age 8 should not be made to close later than 4 p.m. on any day, so that she can have enough time with the children and help guide them. Our children are growing without guidance.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Etanibi Alemeka, a criminologist with the University of Jos. We thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you again.
It's on that note also, we also want to thank our guest here in the studio, Law Mefo, a psychologist. Thank you for joining us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, let's now join our sports desk for sports update on Good Morning Nigeria.